before I turn to feedback and questions, I just wanted to share maybe a few brief reflections from me being a member of the meal working group. It did start at the beginning of these sessions was a lot of really conceptualization and grappling going on, like what's the level of standardization we can achieve? What are these reports going to mean? Who's going to translate them? Who's going to motivate the rest of the community to really come on board? And it was a really good learning experience for me. Those of you that have been parts of other similar working groups, and I can recall maybe ECB, emergency capacity building back in the time, the Sphere Accountability Project, any of those that you have been part of, they all at some point need the data. Right. And Pledge for Change, similarly, with these new commitments, new energy, just gathering around the mill community, the mill working group to discuss and understand, what does that evidence around the PALM framework means for us, and then take that back to our organizations and try and influence and inform the value setting around data and its importance of understanding partnership, understanding values, understanding how we work around the communities where we work, and what we bring to the Pledge for Change table, especially around the mill working group, has been a critical moment within our organization and has shaped quite a bit of the reporting requirements even internally. I want to stop there and maybe hand over to Blessing to see if you have some additions, Blessing, before we get to comments and questions.
Mary, just to let you know, there's 5 minutes remaining for comments and questions. So Blessing, if you have any quick remarks, and then we'll be able to take a couple of questions.
Okay, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Jesse, for the opportunity. I don't want to add too much. I would like us to just allow this time for people who want to share their thoughts or take questions, because I know we're already short on that. And I can't see anything on the Q&A slate yet. So please, if you have a question, don't want to put it in the notes, please, this is the time for us to take that. Wow, okay.
It was such a comprehensive presentation. There are no questions.
Mary seems to have done a very great job and seems we all understood.
Practiced.
Yeah.
So people can please, we've got one question coming through. Can Mary and Blessing, can you see that question from Alex in the chat?
Blessing, do you want to take it?
Okay, let me see it because not okay. You see, I would be interested to learn what it is planned for the oncoming year for the PALM. Okay, we have, like you see on that presentation, we still have a few more reports to complete this round of reporting, and we're strongly hoping that by the end of November, every pending report would have been submitted. And then within the group meeting, we'll deliberate and then reflect on the lessons and recommendations from the report we've collected, and then using that to do a kind of review some of our targets. Like here, Mary said, we are reporting against a minimum 5 metrics amongst the total of 17 metrics that we have, and we are going to reflect, do we want to increase that number, and if we are doing that, to what's the next target, and we think there are some new metrics that are missing and we want to add new metrics, and so all of those will happen and inform what the next round of report will look like. And again, we don't put targets for signatories. We just have a kind of a timeline where we expect that all reports that have come in within a circle, and then signatories can then go ahead and tell us when their reports will come in. Again, I think just to say that it's good to know that CARE already marked December for their next round of reports, and they will collect all of those personal self-set targets from signatories, and we're ready to go. And then just to also mention that it is not all about the self-reports. You also heard about the partner survey, which is currently ongoing in the first round, and that will also become concluded, and then we'll reflect. Again, it's an interactive process, right, where we try to reflect at the end of every round and then use that to project what happens in the next round. Beautiful. We are still going to hear more about the global advisory review panel. We also have the authentic story review and authentic storytelling review panel. They are all doing a different level of work by looking at all of the data coming in, and then they'll do a report. All of those rounds come together to help us complete one round of reporting, and then we'll agree how we go again and when we go again. So there are no extremely set dates, timelines, or what we want to do. But like you heard Mary said, it's a space where we continue learn together, and then assess ourselves and see how much more we can go. I hope that answers your question. I see another question there.
There is a second question, Blessing. I'll give it a try, and then please feel free to add. So it's from Mary Glenson asking, I'd be curious from the PALM working group, what people can do to encourage, support their organizations to get to 100%. So one is, I want to say motivation, like tapping into that nerve that really brings the commitment out. But I feel for our end, for example, one of the bigger impacts we had was around trying to work across different departments and systematizing and synchronizing the reporting timelines, just so that, you know, the timing of multiple external reports are in a way that you can easily get the data out and report. So for us, it was just a lot of internal organization, piloting, getting a working group that's going to review, just setting up the systems for this kind of reporting and sign off. As I mentioned, some organizations have, others don't. It's kind of a learning journey and learning from others. And then really like bringing out the stories from those organizations that are at that 100% to talk about what they were able to achieve and what the value add of this kind of commitment would be. Blessing, I don't know if you want to add to that a little bit more. Over.
Thank you, Mary. I think just to build on that, there is a report out there that I will be happy to share. Maybe I'll put that link, or CD can put that link in the chat. CARE International actually submitted the very first groundbreaking self-reports for this circle and in the history of the pledge. And then following that, we had a conversation with Jay, and very interesting one where he shared some insights and how all of the process, and that's provided us a lot of learning opportunity with what could actually happen in trying to put together your self-report and accountability system. But from all we have seen so far, we encourage that it's very important that we try to be as open as possible, right? And you try to be willing to actually demonstrate that self-accountability, hold yourself to account, because in the first place, these are targets that we've jointly agreed and committed to. So once the openness is there, it becomes easy for us to learn from what other signatories have done. And like Mary mentioned, the MIL working group is a great space for that kind of learning, and where we come together, you share your experience, you ask questions, you have buddies that you can actually confide in and share whatever it is you are struggling with. And very important, we understand that structures differs across organizations. And then where you are not able to collect certain data, you just say you're unable to collect those kind of data. And then you can also see what a signatory is doing to deal with those kind of challenges. And before we put all of those efforts together, you see that we would have find a way or find some kind of learning to help you deal with whatever it is that is making that process not happen yet within the organization. Thank you.
We do have a comment from Fideli, who has said that it appears that MEDA has not fully engaged with the PALM work, and that they will update their colleague from the Information and Knowledge Management Department assigned to the forum on this aspect. But we do have a couple of questions here now. Shabnam would like to ask, what were key challenges faced by the advisory panel? So Lorraine, one for you.
As I've mentioned earlier, for us to do our work as a panel, it's important that we get all the submitted reports, primarily the port reports that I've mentioned, from the self-reporting based on the metrics to the partner feedback survey, and then from the authentic storytelling expert review panel, and of course, some addition, whether it's from Loop or others. So we're just about to start our work in terms of reviewing all this so that I think come next round of our meeting, we have a complete report to be shared, feedback. And the role of the panel is also to feedback everything individually to each and every INGO signatory. So that would be one of those very exciting processes as well. Thanks.
There's a question for Fabeha, right? Jess, you want to take that, or I should go ahead and call Fabeha's attention to this?
Thanks, Blessing. Do you want to, yes, around the key challenges in authentic storytelling? One for Fabiha. Should we go to that one next? So Fabiha, Ashika would like to ask, one of the key challenges in authentic storytelling is language. How did you facilitate this concern?
There are a couple of other challenges as well, because you know that we are looking into various dimensions, and the rubric has been developed with this 5 dimension, and we are always, for an example, when we are going to the submission, there are specific specific publication. For an example, calendar as publication, it is a printed material fully focused on photograph, and so we were identifying various aspects with the imagery and language. So that's why it's not only about the language, but there are various aspects. We are still navigating how to best handle that. Jess, you are muted.
Thank you. Thanks, Fabiha. Blessing, there's a couple of questions regarding the survey. Did you want to take those? Did you or Mary? There's one question from Valeria, which says, when will the results of the survey be available? And also from Gwyneth, who asks, most of us are already doing partner surveys, but not necessarily focused on Pledge for Change. How can these be aligned to minimize our requests to partners?
Okay. For the timeline for the platform for the WASI survey, we're expecting at the onset, we're expecting that by November we would have completed the first round. However, as we have progressed, we've seen that some things have dragged, and we are now expecting that at the most by the end of December we would have had the first draft of what is happening in the data. Currently, we are still the WASI is in the field collecting data. We are hoping that, like I said, by the end of December, we'll have a first draft of what the data is saying. And then for the question about partners, or the comment about partners or organizations who already have some form of channels for collecting feedback. I was trying to type a response, but I'll just go out and read out what I was typing. We acknowledge that, right? And that's why we encourage that you come forward and say what partner feedback you have, and you share that with us. We're able to actually to learn from that process, and then just to be sure that we have a space through which partners can share their partner experience with us as INGOs or as signatories. So when you share that, and then we can see if you think that is sufficient enough for you, you good. You can keep using that as long as we know that you have that that window. Or if not, you are welcome to sign up to the pledge supported WASI-led survey. Thank you.
Thanks, Blessing. Now, it doesn't look like there's any other questions. We do have another 10 minutes scheduled for Q&A. Does anyone else have any questions for our 3 presenters? Fabiha, Lorene, Blessing, Mary, do you want to add anything at all? Oh, Kate, you might have a question.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to, sorry, I got booted out earlier, so maybe this was already covered, but I saw a question from Kamar about signatory accountability and the relatively low level of engagement that this shows. Current state is not encouraging at all. I think that's a really important comment to give voice to. And so, Kamar, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that. I'm happy to speak to it, or others may also want to.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Kate, first of all, to highlight this. Actually, as far as my experience is concerned, at the global headquarter levels, usually the reporting mechanism is more strengthened within the different INGOs. But at the country level, so if the country level, it is more weaker, our translation, our transformation of those, we can say the commitments is not very much high. But if we see this, survey, so it also, it is not very encouraging that if the headquarter level engagement or their commitment level is low, so it means we need to push more, self accountability among us, that how we can strengthen the system within ourselves, how we can make accountable ourselves by own and by the others, and then ultimately we will achieve the targets whatever we have set for ourselves, and then we will move forward to the second tier, that how we can translate and transform the global commitments and global practices to the country levels. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Thank you. I think there's just one more comment, a comment from Avatar, which is to Fabiha. It's a comment for discussion, not on what you have said, but building on it. We often have the gaze almost always on South communities, but not on privilege or privileges, white, North, patriarchy, etc. How do we do authentic storytelling look at this dimension? And he notes that it may be a conversation for a later time. It is a big comment and might open up a discussion that we can't quite cover today. But Fabiha, did you want to make any comment on that from Avatar?
Yes, definitely. It's a very brief comment that I want to make. As you say, that it's a big discussion that we should definitely carry on. Even during our assessment, we have received materials that has been covered. For an example, in Western part, in every photograph, the photographer name has been mentioned, but when someone is reporting on Mozambique, the photographer's name has been mentioned at the end notes. This shouldn't be the practice. This is just an example. And then in some other materials, when we are seeing some Western coverage, children's identity has been protected very beautifully. But when I am accessing other materials in southern part, children's identity and their voices is not well presented. So definitely this is a discussion, because the light has been always the southern part, but it's not in a good light. And language is always an issue, because sometimes we are also noticing that for the blog post, maybe a good journalist or writer has written the report in a good way, but someone in social media is sharing the same blog post in a very problematic language, because maybe the social media manager is not from journalistic background. Maybe he or she doesn't have that information, like how we can also address these issues, because some materials are extremely good in a blog post or in website. The photographs are wonderful, but when people are sharing in TikTok or in Instagram or in Facebook, the associated text is so problematic that we are still navigating how to address it. And definitely in our assessment panel, it is a discussion, because we are handling each post with very care. so that we can give our, some feedback, because we are already very happy to signatories that they have provided us such good materials. But again, mentioning partners' name and giving them credibility is also very important. So I must say this is a long discussion, but thanks.
Okay, Charles, I see your hands up. Okay, I'll let you jump in. You're on mute, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank
Come to
you
the
so
mic,
much.
yeah.
Thanks so much, Blessing. Hello to everyone. I just wanted a quick clarity from Alex on the presentation of the partner surveys. I think, yes, it was clear about the 5 signatories that WACC is conducting the partner surveys with. It was clear about the 2 for Keystone, and then there was 6 others. What I want to know is that is it that they are doing partner surveys but maybe have doing a different process, or they are yet to subscribe to either the WACC-led partner survey or the Keystone survey? And the reason I'm asking this is because it would be good to know, because as I'm sitting on the panel, the advisory panel, it would be good to know whether there are other reports that we may expect, not necessarily only from WACC and Keystone. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. So I'll start from, I'll try and respond to you. I'll pass the microphone to Alex. Alex, you maybe add a few and then try to respond to Carla. So yes, the other 6, although we know that different organizations have ways of collecting feedback, but what that chart is telling us that as at the time of putting this together, we don't have the official communication from them telling us how they collect partner feedback. So we've had the other to tell us that they use the Keystone feedback, and we have 5 registered on the WACC survey. But the other 6, I think I've heard a comment earlier today where someone said they collect partner feedback through some kind of survey, but we don't have that record, and we are encouraging them to come forward and let us know what they do with partner survey and partner feedback. And having said that, there's a question on the Charles. Does that respond to your question?
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Alex, please come to the mic and take this this response from Carla. He said she kind of a suggestion. She wants to understand more why we describe the PALM as a decolonization tool. Can read it between the lines, and especially from what you have presented, and I think many colleagues around the world will benefit from maybe some more explanation on what is making the PALM a decolonized tool.
Sure. Yeah, I'll respond to that quickly. Decolonization is a term that has different meanings for different people, and the way we're using it, I suppose, here is to talk about trying to come away from a Euro-colonial way of looking at information. So how do you do that best? You would, first of all, turn around the question. You'd say, whose value counts? Normally, we are asking the questions for the things we want to know. But what we've tried to do in the PALM, and I'll tell you quickly how, is to turn it around so that the questions are being asked not by the signatories. They're being asked either by the Global South partners or by the Global South supporters of the pledge. So there's a kind of a turning the tables. And the other aspect of decolonization that we're using here, so on the one, it's turning around whose value counts, and on the other, it's how we know what we know and how we understand the ways of knowing. So coming away from a Euro-colonial way of knowing, that means coming away from a written focus, accounting focused, and a maybe academic focus of looking at information, and going more towards a storytelling, a more understanding, a kind of a more I suppose maybe systemic way of knowing. And the way you see that in the PALM is because we have a lot of different methodologies that are supposed to complement each other. So rather than, the least decolonial, in fact, the part of the PALM which is not decolonial is the self-reporting, right, itself, because it's a self-reporting. It's very typical, very Euro-colonial, but the metrics in it were not designed by the signatories. They were designed in a concerted effort, particularly prioritizing global South perspectives, voices, in saying what's important for us to know. So that's kind of, I suppose, what I would say to that. The partner survey is led by WAXI, which again turns around who's asking the question. The authentic storytelling assessment, which Patrick G told us about, and the global advisory panel, which Charles is telling us about, are also very much focused on having global South voices on the panels so that we have that change of perspective. And that's what we mean by decolonial. Does that answer your question, Carla?
Thank you, Alex. Really, it was a pleasure to hear this. I think that my comment was rather focused on this. I'm very happy to hear you, but it's the first time I hear it. And many colleagues like me in country offices, in the global majority, they ask themselves, why is the Palm a decolonized tool? So my suggestion to the pledge is make this public, do a little tutorial where Alex is explaining to us why this is decolonial, because people don't know. None of my colleagues know about this. So it's also inspiring for other people working on accountability and learning. So it's more about this. So it was really a pleasure. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you, Alex. I'm looking through the comments, try to pick on other questions. I can't seem to see any at the moment. If you would rather be audible, please indicate, and you have the mic, and let's hear your thoughts.
I see Andrea and then John had their hand up, Blessing.
Okay. Oh, Andrea, please come to the mic.
Yes, I have a question to Patrick and Authentic Storytelling Review panel. Since I am from a Germany-based organization, and so all our submissions would be in German. How are you dealing with like organizations that do not have their material in English?
Well, I think that's really a question for the guys who are facilitating and helping out the panel, because so far all the submissions I've seen are in English, and there was an expectation that they would be submitted in English, and if not, if they are submitted in German, then they've got to have English translations that accompany them. I'm sorry, it's just that we don't have any German speakers, I think, off panel. But yeah, I mean, it is a wider question, because it's not just Germans. It's going to be, people working in many different areas submitting this. And we do need to have something that's a bit more common in terms of how we are able to navigate this issue. But I think for now we will require that all submissions have at least an English translation. Blessing, that's correct, isn't it?
Yes, I'll let Isabella maybe say something about this. I know we've also seen some submissions in Norway. Isabella, let's hear your voice, please.
I mean, I just put in the chat that we are already facing that challenge. There are some materials that are currently in the submission folders in Norwegian only. And we began the discussion, but haven't finished yet, on how the panel will address that. Will we be using Google Translate with an understanding that some nuance might be lost, or coming back to the submitting signatory staff and discussing with them other options, other alternatives. So stay tuned. We'll have to come back to that. But good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella. And Andrea, thanks for that very good question. John, I see your hand. I know you are eager. Come forward, please.
Thank you, Blessing. My name is John Kitri from Oxfam International, calling in from Nairobi. Thank you very much, Blessing, and the team, Alex and Patrick, and WAXI for sharing on the PALM. For me, I think it's very exciting to see the progress we're making to put the numbers out there to make all of us uncomfortable with what we are seeing on the board and then to take action. I wanted to hear a bit more on the learning element of PALM. I think we've seen the accountability element, but I'm very curious, especially as we see these numbers and these tables, how do we then proceed to actually the learning element? Because I think for me that's critical, because one of the things I think as NGOs will have to go through is some very deep education and learning of our old and relearning of new things. And I think for me, that's the learning element that is really, really important. To be honest, I think probably some even level of healing, not just learning, it's just healing from our bad relationship with money, bad relationship with power, bad relationships with position, bad relationships with knowledge. So I think for me, the learning element is something I'm very curious about to learn. Even just a word like we're using, like decolonization. I was in a meeting and I was told decolonization is actually the colonizer's word. Decolonization just means unsettling. It means living. It means ceding space, ceding power. So it's the colonizer's word. For the colonized people, the word is sovereignty, is self-determination, is space to breathe. And so sometimes when you use even words decolonization, to many people it doesn't make sense, but actually to the colonizers it just means, yes, you need to maybe shut up and leave the southern leaders to take voice, to take space, hand over the mic. You don't have to tell the story yourself, hand over and let other people frame the narrative from their own perspectives. But I think anyway, let me stop this speech. I think the question was really around the learning element. How do we foresee that as PALM? Because I think for me, accountability is important, but helping NGOs to heal and progress and learn and unlearn would probably be a very critical element of Pledge for Change if we have to see success in the coming months. So I was very curious to just hear what PALM is thinking of on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John Kitu. Great question. Yes, so maybe I will take us back a bit so we understand how we've journeyed to this point. Up at the last 5-6 months, there was no data available for the PALM, right? It has just been launched, and then data just started coming in. And there's no learning without data. It is now that we've begun to put together the data. We're trying to take the learning forward. It's already happening, but that it happened in different spaces and in different phases. For example, we have the May Working Group, and that is one of the critical learning space for signatories and within the PALM. That's where we have signatory comes together. Most of the persons there are the May representatives for their different organizations, and then right there we share learning around what are the data, what are the application of data that is coming in, and we hear people share their experiences with the process of putting together their self-reports. Some talk about the challenges they are facing and how some data are not available because they're not structured to collect that kind of data within their systems. So all of those spaces are where we look at recommendations coming in from self-reports, right? And then we try to see what learning is available, how we can encourage peer learning. Signatories can learn from what other signatories are doing. And then we'll have, again, the partner survey, which we're expecting the first a round of report from. And that's going to be telling us a lot of things as well about the partnering experience from Southern organizations or from our INGOs partners. And then we'll see what we can learn from that and how we use those feedback to improve processes, to improve systems, to inform how and where change needs to happen more. So that is how the learning within the PALM will happen. Again, you will have heard the Authentic Storytelling Review panel share their preliminary findings. You've heard the Global Advisory Groups say something. All of these will be bringing out feedback, and those feedback will consist of our learning data. And then as the data unfolds, we see what is available to learn and how we encourage this learning to be taken or assimilated by signatories and partners. Does that respond to your question? Thank you. I don't know how much more time we have, still looking through. If we have any question here.
Mary Rose has her hand up. Blessing.
Okay, Mary Rose.
I think it's fascinating to me. I'm looking at the chat, I'm looking at the comments, and then John, the comment that you made about healing. And I sort of want to build on that to the extent where, yeah, we need healing. And INGOs, you're talking about INGOs, doing the healing. But I also think that we need to be honest with ourselves and realize that in terms of the Global South, we have to do some healing ourselves. as much as we can be activists, you know, there are many things that we need to face and deal with. So in a sense, in so many ways, we have to not just face them, but deal with them on a regular basis as part of a learning process, and it's part of the approach. Because the reality is that this is all new. People keep talking about decolonization, and yes, there have been studies and everything else, but we are in the process of putting together, of building this. So every feedback, but we also need to be very self-aware, to be honest with you. So it is not a lot of the decolonization, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, is the idea that it's the INGOs and the global north and the West and everything else. The same way we want to put certain things and processes upside down so that they can be right side up, we also need to make sure that we address what has been centuries of basically colonization in ourselves, within our system. What is it? What kind of world do we want to build? What makes sense from a community perspective, from a community-led perspective? What makes sense from a solidarity perspective? Anyway, so that's my 2 cents when it comes to that.
Okay. Thank you, Mary-Rose. Thank you, John. Thank you, Andrew, and everyone that was spoken. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the time to take all of the questions that we have now, but we strongly encourage that you use the chat box, use the Q&A function. Please drop your thoughts. We are going to gather all of this, and we'll get back to you in what